And now I'm so excited to introduce you to the two speakers this evening. Florangela Davila is the executive editor and executive director at South Seattle Emerald. She's earned regional and national awards for her work as the former race and immigration reporter for the Seattle Times, and she's also led teams at Cascade PBS and at KNKX. And a person who needs very little introduction, Katie B. Wilson has served as mayor of Seattle since January of 2026, and she's the co-founder of the Transit Riders Union, leading the organization for over a decade. She approaches her role of mayor from the perspective of a coalition builder and has assembled a diverse and experienced team ready to deliver responsible and effective governance. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Wilson and Florangela to the stage.
Good evening.
Hello. I think you are all the coolest people in person and the ones on live stream, because it's 6 o'clock on a Friday and you're here, and that says a lot about our city. I said yes to having this conversation in this format because I'm still trying to figure out who this mayor is, right? She's new to us. It hasn't even been 100 days. I think you're 2 weeks short of 100 days. And you have the power to influence how my life is going to be and my family's life here in Seattle. I've also, on behalf of the South Seattle Emerald, we love different perspectives and voices and bringing them together. So in this space, I'm excited to listen. But first, I'm going to talk. Two things. These aren't normal times, and I will say that I carry my federal ID, and not too long ago had to present it to some immigration folks and had that fear and actually wrote some things down in case, for whatever reason, I would not come home. I also still carry with me the sound of hearing a mother's wail hours after finding out her child was killed. I live, like a 2 minutes maybe if I drive fast, from the site at Henderson and Rainier, where the shootings of 2 Rainier Beach kids happened in January. And for those of you who have experienced gun violence, that is as intimate as has happened to me in terms of hearing somebody's wail, the wail of a mother. It will stay with you. So I really appreciate having this chance to talk to you about an issue that is very controversial. People have very passionate opinions about, and so I promise we will give you all time to talk and listen, because that's what I was told, that you really want to hear from the community, all parts of the community, and you also want to own your decision and explain yourself. So I want to hear from you, Mayor. At what point, I'm thinking possibly before the campaign even started, when you started thinking about surveillance and cameras and technology, at what point did this start living in your head? And can you take us a little bit about through your thinking? What have you learned along the way up until now?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you all for being here. As Florangela said, I just thought it was really important to have like an in-person town hall style discussion about this, because I think sometimes the decisions of elected officials can feel kind of remote, and I really do just want a chance to be able to, be here in person and explain and also listen. I think, during the campaign last year, this became an issue when the city council was considering an expansion of the surveillance pilot, the CCTV surveillance pilot. I would say before that, I was kind of aware of issues around surveillance, had never really done a deep dive and didn't really have like a super well formulated personal set of values or opinion, other than kind of general skepticism of like, I don't really want to live in a society that's got cameras on every street corner, hadn't really dug deep on like, okay, how do these cameras work? What are they used for? What are the arguments for them? And so, but during the campaign, this issue came up where, we had this pilot, which went into effect April of last year, where we have these cameras in 3 neighborhoods in Seattle. And then the city council was considering this expansion into 3 more neighborhoods. And there was a public outcry led by immigrants' rights groups and civil liberties groups because of the perceived dangers that the data could fall into the hands of federal authorities and be used for immigration enforcement. And so at that point during the campaign, I repeatedly expressed concerns about that potential misuse of that data and lack of security. And then, of course, I was successful in my election and am now in a position where I can actually make decisions that influence, right, whether this expansion happens and what the future is of the kind of use of surveillance in Seattle. And so then being in that position, I realized that I really needed to do a deeper dive, right? Because now, not just being in a position where I'm arguing with another candidate on the debate stage, but actually able to take an action that is going to impact people's daily lives, I really felt the need to understand what is the impact of that decision going to be.
Confront your own skepticism that you had earlier?
Yeah, exactly. And also, I mean, I think also just coming from the campaign to a position where now, I am representing the city of Seattle, just a higher level of need to really understand the variety of perspectives that people are bringing to this issue, and to really engage with the different constituencies that have, this is a controversial issue, have very, very, very different opinions about the utility of the cameras, about the risks involved, and about whether this is a direction that the city should be going in our approach to public safety.
So what was your approach in learning and in gathering those perspectives? I would imagine you did a lot of reading and you looked at all the decisions and all the legislation and all the comments and things from the past. But then what were the face-to-face and what were the experiences? And tell us a little bit about the differences, because it's such a polarized conversation about whether this technology is necessary, what is critical, what is the harm that could be caused.
Yeah, and I think part of what makes this such a hard conversation is because there are these different goals and values that can feel kind of incommensurate, kind of like apples and oranges. So on the one hand, you have public safety and accountability for crime, and the argument is that cameras and surveillance can be effective in preventing crime, that's part of the argument, and in solving crime once it occurs. And it's complex because actually assessing whether that is the case in practice is actually really difficult, right? There's a lot of research, but this is like a real-world experiment, and there's so many factors that influence crime rates over any period of time or within a given city that the evidence is kind of murky on whether cameras actually deter or prevent crime. And there's some studies which suggest they do, others that suggest, oh, maybe not. What I've seen from both the research and the way that the cameras are used in Seattle is that they can be, are useful in solving crime. So that's kind of like one side of this. But then on the other side, you have the risk, right? And the risk and also just the concerns generally about privacy, right? Like what level of surveillance is kind of acceptable? Do we want to subject ourselves to? There are some constitutional questions around that, right? Around the Fourth Amendment and the right to not have, warrantless search. But beyond that, just, the risk that when you centralize the power to get this information, that could be misused, whether that's by our own law enforcement or by federal authorities. And assessing that level of risk is really, really hard. And so you have kind of these different, and privacy is of different levels of importance to different people. So people just end up having, I think, a really different assessments based on what they kind of care most about this issue, and add to that mistrust, right? Because these technologies are often being pushed by private companies that have a profit motive, and so they kind of have an incentive to oversell what they can do. And then there's all of the ways that many of us have mistrust of our criminal justice system. So there's just a lot of layers that mean that different people coming from different perspectives are going to have a very different calculus, and even for an individual trying to decide kind of like what you think, it can be a very different kind of calculus to make to kind of weigh these different things. So I feel like I didn't quite answer your question. I got off on a tangent.
You talked about the layers, and we'll probably be circling back, and I'm sure the questions will also redirect us. But you mentioned values, and I know that was brought up, I think, by Erica Barnett. I think you're here at the end of your presser last week. But I'm curious about the skepticism or the questions you had before you became mayor and what you were saying on the campaign, and how those values have or have not changed as you've been learning more about surveillance. And at what point, when you get input and you're hearing different perspectives, have your values changed? And or what are the values of Seattle that tells you that this is technology that we should be using?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I certainly have learned a lot more since entering office about how, for example, the CCTV cameras in the Real-Time Crime Center work. And also, I've done a lot more thinking, and also in hearing from, for example, people who've lost loved ones to violence, about the importance to them of having those crimes be solved and coming to some resolution about what happened and there being some accountability. And so I certainly have done a lot more thinking about just like the public benefit of solving crimes. And I kind of feel like that's something that I'm a little hesitant to do a broad strokes, this is what the left does, because I'm sure that people will feel that I'm doing a straw man. But I do think that on the left, we need to be able to say that it is a good thing to solve crimes and that there is a public benefit to doing that. And we can say that while also having all of the warranted concern about our criminal justice system and over-policing and inequities in the criminal justice system.
But do we know that that the CCTV cameras actually do solve crimes? And when you make the distinction between, say, property crimes and violent crimes, is there a difference?
Yeah, and I mean, this is part of why we're doing the pause, right? Because I think from the information that SPD has shared about the way the cameras are being used, it's very clear, anecdotally, the cameras are being used to solve crimes, right, including serious crimes like homicides. Now, there's a bigger question of, how many of these crimes could not have been solved without the cameras, right? And to what extent, I mean, there's also just even if a crime could have been solved without the cameras, are we doing it much faster and with less, manpower, so that now we have police capacity that can be devoted to more preventative policing or other things that we want police to be doing, right? So, I think from what I've seen, I have confidence that the cameras are useful in solving crimes. Now, how useful? What is the magnitude of that benefit? That's a question mark. And there's an evaluation going on now of the camera system being done by the Office of the Inspector General in partnership with UPenn, which I think is supposed to be getting at some of that. So we will learn something more through that evaluation about kind of how the system is being used and how useful it is.
When will that study, that audit, or be completed? And can you talk a little bit about the second audit that you're looking at as well?
Yeah, so this evaluation, I believe, is supposed to be completed kind of by the end of this year. And that was an evaluation that was planned of this pilot, which was begun last year. So that was, not something that was something that was already planned by the time I got into office. What we are doing that's new is specifically an audit around data storage, security, and sharing practices, and also kind of privacy and civil liberties. And that is the one that is being conducted by NYU Policing Project.
You spent some time at the Real-Time Crime Center, and in evaluating and digging through this issue, I'm wondering if there was anything that shocked you or really bothered you about what you learned. There's a lot of questions we don't know, which is why you're pursuing and you want. But what about things that you did learn? Was there anything that stopped you and upset you?
You mean concerns about how the system works or is being used?
How it's being employed. Right, as of now.
Well, and maybe I should just level set, because I don't know how much familiarity everyone here has, just to say something about how that system is being used. And I should also say that in explaining how the camera system is being used, I think that it is possible for us to all get on the same page about all of the facts, and for people to feel very different ways about whether this is a technology we should be using. So I'm not I'm always reluctant to be like, here's how it works, as though I'm saying like, well, if everyone just understood how it worked, then, you know, they would think that it was fine or something. Like, I don't think that's the case. So I'm not trying to like mayor-splain the CCTV cameras, but.
Well, and I'm wondering, as you give us that information, if you could also lay out the wider context of surveillance in general. How often? So please.
You mean like in Seattle? Like, what do we have?
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm sure that I would imagine that might have surprised you in understanding and realizing, oh, crap, this is how many cameras there are, and this is what they're doing.
Yeah, okay, so in Seattle, so the CCTV camera pilot started in, I believe, last April, and we have 62 cameras which are located in 3 specific kind of high crime neighborhoods of the city. There's the North Aurora corridor, there's the downtown business district concentrated around 3rd Ave, and then there's the Chinatown International District. And so those cameras feed into the real-time crime center. They are not monitored continuously, so there's not people just like watching camera footage. Now, and that's actually important because that's a difference. There actually are other cities in the United States where they do more like active monitoring, where there's actually people just watching the camera footage continuously. We do not do that here. And in general, like honestly, this is something that surprised me that I've learned over the last couple weeks. Compared to like most other major cities in the US, we have like very, very little surveillance. We are on the like very little surveillance end of the spectrum compared to Boston, New York City, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., et cetera. But basically, so the footage is stored like on site in the camera, so it's not automatically uploaded anywhere. On site in the cameras for 5 days, after which it's erased. Except if there's an incident where the footage is called up. And so if there's like a 911 call and the police, and I believe the care team can also request this, want to access that footage, then they can. And this can be done in real time. So if there's like a serious incident, the people in the real-time crime center can actually tune in and watch the cameras live. And they have used this to, you know, apprehend a suspect who, you know, just shot someone, or, you know, this happens. I don't know how often that happens, so that's a question that hopefully the evaluation will get at. But once footage is called up in response to an incident, it does get uploaded into evidence.com. And so this is one of the points which is a concern for me, because those servers are in other states, and we don't necessarily know what how secure is that data once it's uploaded to those servers that's no longer protected necessarily by Washington State's kind of privacy laws. So this is one reason why we're doing this audit, the safety and security audit. So that's like basically how the RTCC works. And there's and another thing that we learned in visiting the RTCC, and actually big thanks to the staff at the RTCC who are very welcoming and like in explaining how everything works. They don't share data with other law enforcement agencies. But one thing we learned is that while that is their practice, when we checked, that's not actually codified as SPD policy. So the other thing that we're doing over the next few months, in addition to this audit, is trying to codify some of these good practices into actual policy so that it's not just dependent on the judgment of whoever is running the RTCC. Another thing is, there are cameras where there might be like an apartment building in view. There's masking so that you can't actually see like people's balconies or people's windows or whatever. And there was one camera which was near a reproductive health care and gender affirming care facility. That's the one that we are turning off. But there was also masking in place on that. And that's an area where both I have concerns around, and supposedly we are told that masking can't be undone. Like if federal authorities came in, like you can't unwind that masking. But that's something that we want this security audit to look at. Is that actually the case? But the masking, I believe, is another thing which is a good practice, but which was not sufficiently codified in policy. So part of what we're doing is trying to make sure that we actually have policies on paper which provide these protections, as opposed to this just being like, this happens to be the way that we do it.
So on that point, this is just the way we happen to do it. We want to codify the policies in regards to how SPD is using
exactly
monitoring the data.
And I should answer your question. And
these are civilians that you.
Yes.
Okay. But we're talking about SPD, which has its own problems. I mean, why shouldn't there be a higher barrier, a higher standard that we hold SPD accountable beyond just codifying policies? Like what happens if the civilians who report to police officers decide they're not going to do it this way, then what happens?
I mean, I think this is just why oversight is important, that there be regular, basically, audits of how these systems are working.
And there's also this notion that the data is not going to be shared, perhaps out of state or to other agencies, but we should just assume and trust that the federal government wouldn't, say, acquire the data without proper means. Like, I mean, I feel like there was the times we're living in, the discussion is very different from when this technology was first proposed, which is where the question of harm comes in, which I think is at the root of all the criticism that is being levied at. Like, why should we open the door to this technology in the first place?
I mean, I think it really is that balance between, the benefits that the system is providing versus what we believe the risks to be. And so the goal here is to really assess what those risks are and then take steps to minimize them. And then we have to balance that against what we believe the benefits to be. And I mean, there's no other, that's how we make policy, right? And now, yeah, I mean, we could decide the risks are too great and then shut the cameras off, right? But that's the assessment that we're trying to make through doing these.
Have you taken public safety walks or tours on the ground? When you've gone out, tell me a little bit about some of the things that you've been hearing from the different people throughout the city, and what's sitting with you when you're thinking with the decision that you made and announced last week?
Yeah, I mean, I think my team and I have talked with a lot of people in the Chinatown International District, in the, Capitol Hill Nightlife District, which is one of the neighborhoods where cameras were, are slated to expand, with folks around Garfield High School and the business district there, and, family and people involved in the school community. And
about 1,000 people signed a petition from the Chinatown International District just
in
this
favor.
week.
Yeah,
right.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, there are strong feelings on both sides, and I really think like legitimate. Again, because this is such, we are balancing these really very real things on both sides, and I mean, I think that there's. There's real. So the question is just
a little bit about just some of the interactions you've had, either in person or on these public safety walks, that's really struck you, that's sitting with you. Like, yes, this is actually why I'm going to announce that we're going to do these audits, that I'm going to put in the 26 cameras around the stadium district, that I want to pause right now.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there is a feeling in neighborhoods where there's high incidence of crime and a feeling of lack of safety. Many people, not everyone, but many people who live there, people who work there, and who see day by day things happening and often feel that there's not really a response to those things, right? There are, assaults happening, property crime happening, and this is kind of another question in my mind, because I think when these cameras were first discussed and this pilot was decided upon, it was really the public discussion was really about violent crime, and I think that there is a real conversation to be had about what's the range of crimes that we actually want to use these cameras for? And my understanding from the way that they're currently being used in the Real-Time Crime Center is that there's just kind of triage. So when there's something, the most serious crime going on is what they're using it for, but then if there's not any particularly serious crime going on, then they might actually, if someone calls in and wants to see footage related to a lower level, property crime or something, they will use it, right? And so that's something that was not necessarily part of the public discussion when the cameras were initially decided upon, but it is how they're being used. And it's also, if you look at the research, some of the more effective use of the cameras is for more like property crime. And also they tend to the extent that there's a deterrent effect, it's often related to property crime rather than violent crime. So that's another big policy conversation that I think we need to have is if we are gonna have these cameras, do we really just wanna use that for the most serious violent crime? or are we comfortable using it for lower level crime as well? So anyway, I would say that a lot of people in these neighborhoods where there are high levels of crime feel that like they want, more of a response when crime occurs. They want crimes to be solved, and they see the cameras as both a tool for that and a tool for potentially just kind of more of a sense of like someone is keeping an eye on things, and so yeah, I don't know. There's I think a good amount of public support for the cameras from that perspective, and then there is people opposed for all of the reasons of worrying about what could happen if that data gets into the hands of the federal government.
So someone to keep an eye on things, why lean on technology and not someone to keep an eye on things, be more police?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so my personal opinion is that I think there could be a role for kind of a narrow use of these cameras, but we cannot lean on these as like the main public safety strategy because they're just not, right? And so, to the extent that we're using them, and I think that's again like a kind of a public conversation that we haven't sufficiently had of like in what circumstances is this an appropriate part of the strategy? That's only a small part of a larger public safety strategy. And in neighborhoods that have high levels of crime, a more consistent police presence is another part of what a lot of people are asking for. And I mean, I've told the story before, but one of the things that really hit me when I talked to youth in Rainier Beach in the wake of the shootings down there was that, these students were saying, like, we want more police presence. We feel like the police are absent, but then also, like, we want that police presence to be people that we trust, people that, look like us, people that understand this community. And so they had both kind of a feeling of being neglected, but also a mistrust. And so I think that's just a whole nother project, right, of trying to provide the right kind of police presence in neighborhoods that need it and make sure that that is, where we're building that trust between the police and the communities that they're serving in.
Do you know how much all of this is going to cost? The audits, the 26 cameras around the stadium district, if you agree to expand the pilot program, how much is all of this?
So the audit, I believe we're keeping it around $50,000. And that is coming out of SPD's budget, out of the kind of camera budget, basically. And I don't have in my head the figure for how much the expansion is costing, but that is money that was already appropriated by the city in last year's budget.
Let's talk about the...
And I guess I'll say just to tie together the cameras and the kind of other parts of the public safety strategy, which of course is not just increased police presence, right? There's a ton of upstream things that we need to do to reduce crime and to, there's like environmental interventions and just ways that we can make neighborhoods safer and our alternative response, right? There's a lot of pieces to that. But one thing that, if the cameras are effective at helping the police to solve crimes in a way that means that we are using less police capacity to solve those crimes, then that does free up police capacity to do these other things. So I think that is, and again, like, what is the magnitude of that benefit? I don't know. So that's part of what we need to find out. But I do think that that's a legitimate argument for how, even if the presence of the cameras does not directly prevent crime, if you're freeing up police capacity to do other things which do prevent crime, then that is helpful.
But what...
$3.1 million and $250,000 a year.
We might need you to ask the question or make that statement on the microphone because people on the live stream can't. So just, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. No, sorry. I completely lost my train of thought. I have other questions, so this is going to not sound really perfect segue. The data point. What is the data point that's going to tell you that these things are effective? Like, you talked about crime, but how much crime is reduction? Like, how are you going to know that these are worth keeping in place?
I mean, I think that there's certainly in some of the research that I've seen around these camera systems, there's a calculation made around basically what we were just talking about. To what extent are these cameras freeing up police capacity, and that's just a monetary thing. So are the cameras, worth their cost in terms of what they are doing to allow us to prevent and or solve crime in a way that saves money? So that is a calculation that people make. Now, how accurate is it? I don't know, but I think that is one thing that would be relevant.
And I want to get this right, but I was talking to somebody who was on your transition team, a member of the youth and student group, and they were telling me that this was an overwhelming concern among the younger population, and it made them feel vulnerable and targeted, and they weren't comfortable with this idea. So how do you juxtapose that feeling with, say, the reduction in crime if you get that data point?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is what makes this issue so hard, because people feel really strongly about it, and people feel strongly about it on both sides, right? And so there are people for whom having those cameras in the neighborhood where they live or work makes them feel less safe, and there are people for whom that makes them feel more safe. And those feelings are important, because those feelings are part of our experience of the city and our quality of life. I think there's not a way to make this decision. It's not really a matter of weighing those feelings against the data. It's kind of we're needing to make a reasoned decision based on the impact on people's quality of life, and the feelings are part of that, but there's feelings on both sides. I mean, I don't know, what is a better way to come to a decision? We could do a public vote, right? And San Francisco recently had public votes on surveillance, and people voted to dramatically expand surveillance, and now they have way more surveillance than we do. So we could go that direction. But short of that, it's really this kind of conversation where we're weighing a lot of different things which can feel incommensurate.
Before you became mayor, did you feel safe in the city? Were there places in the city that you wouldn't go to at a certain time of the night, day?
I personally tend to feel pretty safe, but anywhere. But that I understand that other people don't, and I don't think that my feeling of being safe is any more valid than other people's feeling of being unsafe. I mean, I will say that I have definitely been in situations where I felt unsafe, and riding the bus or at I remember one time at the Soto Light Rail Station, which tends to be an area where there's just not a lot of people. And I remember getting off the train with my daughter when she was a baby, and there was someone who was definitely having some kind of mental health crisis and was behaving aggressively. And so there's things like that have made me feel unsafe.
And if there had been cameras there, would you have felt safer?
No.
Just taking note of the time. It's 6:30. I had one more question, and then I want to open it up to the audience and/or the audience watching from home. Seattle is going to host FIFA World Cup. You are placing 26 cameras around the stadium district that you will not turn on, but they will be ready in case there's a credible threat. And last week, it was still unclear what was the definition of a credible threat. Has gotten any more clarity as to what that?
No. So, and just to get the numbers right, because I said this incorrectly at the press conference. So, 26 cameras are a batch of cameras that are arriving. I believe it's 20 of those that are going to be installed in the Soto district, and the plan was for 3 of the others to be installed in Capitol Hill, 3 in the Central District near Garfield, and then a later batch of cameras was going to add more to Capitol Hill and Garfield. So just to get the numbers correct. So it's actually 20 in the kind of stadium district. So we are going to install those, and we are not going to turn them on. And we are working with SPD to figure out kind of what that definition of a credible threat is.
Wouldn't it, I don't know, wouldn't it have been better if the concern was the cameras are there to guard it on this international event, the most watched event and most attended event, to just say, we're bringing in the cameras, we're turning them on until World Cup is over? And then what happens to those cameras after World Cup?
So, we anticipate this. So yes, that would have been another direction to go, to just say we're installing the cameras and we're turning them on because there's this big global event. I decided to not turn them on unless there's a credible threat. That's a decision I made. I think you can make an argument that you just turn them on, that's easier, right? So that's just, I don't know. It's just a hard decision, and that's the direction I decided to go.
So you're not waiting for the audit to tell you or to give you a better indication if those cameras should be used?
So the audit is not going to be likely completed before the World Cup. So that's the reason why we're moving forward with those cameras kind of before, because we just can't complete the audit before the World Cup. So that's the reason for that decision. And so the idea is that the audit will be complete sometime in the summer. And then I will be able to make an assessment, and we will share the results. So there'll be a conversation around that, but we'll be able to make an assessment of whether to move forward with installing the cameras in the other two neighborhoods.
And what happens to the cameras, the World Cup cameras after World Cup?
They will be installed pending the decision of whether we're actually moving forward with the expansion.
Let's open it up to questions from the audience. And I think there's a microphone and a QR iPad in very little font, so I will have to put on my glasses.
Just want to remind folks, if you'd like to ask a question, please line up back here. You will have no more than 60 seconds before the mic is turned off. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, but that's going to be up to the speakers here. And you can also submit questions digitally that Florangela has on the iPad there.
Hi there. My name is Gus. I'll be quick because I got to go to the Mariners game after this. My question for you, Katie, is the police cited a 300% arrest increase after more cameras were installed around Seattle in the past few years. And they use this as a justification for why we need more cameras in the area. I'm curious, how much weight do you give these police statistics from the SPD? How much weight do they carry in your decision-making process?
You're talking about the 300% increase in justice that was proclaimed? Yeah.
Yeah, that's one example, but just kind of statistics from them in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is exactly why I think we're waiting for the evaluation that's taking place now, right, which the Office of the Inspector General and UPenn are conducting, because the information that we're getting from SPD is useful, but I think it really doesn't tell us enough, right? And so when high level we're being told, here's the number of incidents that these cameras have been used in, here's the number of investigations these cameras have been used in, we have this many homicides, this many blah, blah, blah. That's kind of helpful, but it actually doesn't tell us how useful the cameras are. How many of those incidents could not have been solved without the camera, right? That kind of thing. So, I think it's the jury's out. That's why I'm interested in the results of the evaluation. Also recognizing that the results of the evaluation are probably not going to tell us everything we want to know. The research on this is murky.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Am I good to? Okay. Hello. So your team and also yourself have admitted that you don't know really how secure this data from the cameras is. And it seemed like it was so much as a concern that you shut off a camera near a gender-affirming care facility. So my question is, why are the cameras still on if we don't know if this information is secure and could potentially be harmful, especially when Axon just ended their partnership with Flock in 2024?
So, yeah, I mean, I think what I would say to this is that, you know, shut that camera off out of an abundance of caution. And, you know, if you look at the way that ICE is using surveillance, they have their own ALPR automatic license plate reader cameras. They are using those to pick people up. It's not actually, they kind of don't need us, okay? And I'm not aware of any instances of ICE actually using CCTV camera footage anywhere.
So this is beyond ICE. Just
Yeah.
the data not being secure itself, I think, is reason enough.
I don't think we have like concerns about like overall data security. It's more about like, could the federal government get like, I mean, no more. Hold on. Hold on. I just mean, I don't, like, this data is not, like, less secure than any other data. I guess, what kind of data security concerns are you talking about? Because I think what we're looking at is, like...
security breaches, like hackers, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's data everywhere. We're being surveilled all the time by our phones. Yeah. I'm just saying, like
thank you. No, that's... Thank you.
Hi, Howard Gale from the 36th District Democrats. So, as you just said, the top concern should not be CCTV in terms of threats to immigrant populations and literally hundreds of thousands of people living in Seattle from Fourth Amendment violations. Given that, my question is, why are we not, as mayor, you have executive authority over policing, over the police chief. Why are you not doing two things that you could literally do tomorrow? And these are things the 36th District Democrats have asked of you. One is to actually task police to protect people's Fourth Amendment rights. This has been done by Mayor Michelle Wu in Boston. It's something that you could do tomorrow. That's number one. Number two, as evidence that we really can't trust the police is what's been happening with our care team. That they're underutilized by over 76%, 72% is the figure. Tomorrow, you could write an executive order that says SPD has to stop interfering with care. These are two very...
I think that was 60 seconds.
These are two extremely important public safety issues. So the question is, will you actually direct the SPD to stop interfering with the care team? And two, will you direct SPD to actually start protecting people's Fourth Amendment rights? Thanks.
So the issues with the care team and the scope of its ability to respond, I don't think can be solved with an executive order. Happy to have you send me, some draft language that my team can review. And also happy to have you send me what Boston is doing around Fourth Amendment, because we want to do everything we can. So if there's something we can do that we can't, then let's do it.
I actually have, in terms of Fourth Amendment, I've been talking to you for 7 months. I've reached out to your team, and I've been rebuffed. 36 district Dems have been rebuffed. Other people have reached out. This is something I do think, I get it. You're scared of the SPD and SPOG.
No, I'm not scared of the SPD and SPOG.
Well, then there's a reason that you're not responding.
Okay. Thank you, Howard.
Hello. As someone who works in social work and has for about 6 years, I will say the care team doesn't have enough resources. And I work in housing for people who are True Blood clients, and we don't have nearly enough housing. And my understanding is that it will cost about $3.1 million and $250,000 a year for the cameras. That's my understanding. So I think right now we have two options. Do we want to use camera systems that will allow for mass surveillance during a time where immigrants are being rounded up and kidnapped off the streets? And they're probably, if ICE or any of them get this camera footage, they will use AI photo recognition. So using AI facial recognition systems, studies show, according to MIT, that they cannot always tell the difference between two people with similar dark skin tones. Which sounds like it is really good at locking people up, even if it's not the right people. Especially when we're talking about Garfield or like Rainier Beach, that kind of area. Okay, so next, there are proven alternatives.
The mic, 60 seconds.
Proven alternatives like TAP program, after school programs, and other social programs that can be used.
Folks, one of the reasons we're trying to cut mics is if you look behind you, the queue's quite long. So we're just trying to get as many perspectives as possible.
I just want to learn, like,
Totally. I'm going to hand back the mayor to the mayor, and she's going to. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that felt like more of a comment than a question. So,
about
but
like TAP programs and other social programs that actually have proven to prevent crime rather than.
yeah, and like I said, like many things we need to do on public safety, including lots of upstream and preventative work.
Okay, my name is Inez. I'm with the International Migrants Alliance. So I have two things. First of all, I think it's really upsetting that you keep bringing up Rainier Beach because now another youth is actually in detention or in the system, which is not, that doesn't feel like a solved crime to me. So that's just one step. Axon, the contractor for the CCTV cameras, you say that they've never used, ICE has never used it to actually make arrests or detainment. We are in unprecedented times. We're deporting people to third countries. So 2025 was the deadliest year for migrants in detention. What will you do if someone, based off of the surveillance from the CCTV cameras, is detained and dies? How will you respond? Because people are dying in detention. ICE is killing people.
So, as I said, so SPD does not share data from the cameras with any other agencies.
Axon works with CBP, and they've made 147 million since 2008.
So again, Axon does all kinds of things, right? All these companies do all kinds of things. I'm not trying to defend Axon as a good company. But what I'm saying is that the data from Seattle's CCTV cameras is not, to our knowledge, being shared with any other agency. No, they can't just take it. They can't just take it.
I think that it's just, as someone who is coming from organizing with migrants, we know people who've actually been torn out of their cars.
I understand. Yes, I know.
Saying that, to our knowledge, it doesn't actually help us feel better, and it doesn't actually help us feel safer with this program.
I understand the mistrust.
Good evening, Mayor Wilson. It's nice to see you. I had the honor of serving as a co-lead for your transition team representing youth and students, and also my organization, the Washington Bus, endorsed you for mayor. And I come up here today because I know that my team of young people put together a recommendation in the perspective of youth civil rights that these cameras do not make young people feel safe. And I wanted to ask you, especially knowing that you are planning on having expansions in places where young Seattleites congregate, young people feel like these cameras, they criminalize our presence and make us feel like we're punished for being and having public lives in Seattle. So I want to ask you, what, if you will not remove these cameras, if you will not turn them off, if you will not stop these expansions, what will you do to preserve the civil rights and public life and safety of young people? And what education or initiatives or work will your office do to make this happen? 1 minute.
That was great. Yeah, I mean, I and my office are very committed to continuing to engage with you and the other members of the transition team and young people across the city to address those very questions. And just want to acknowledge that, like, yes, understand that the work that you all did came forward with a strong recommendation from the young people that you talked to turn off the cameras. And I'm not doing that. So just acknowledging that. And this will be a continuing conversation, and definitely want to do, like, everything we can to make our public space is welcoming and to make everyone feel welcome in it and safe in it. And yeah, we'll keep working on that together.
I'm getting questions from the live stream or the QR, so I'm just going to jump in really quickly. Okay. Appreciate that you're acknowledging the need to weigh rights violations and privacy against actual data and the budget juggle of officer staffing. But part of the cost of these cameras is human, right? There is a real human impact of surveillance that is difficult to measure in budget dollars. So how is Seattle attempting to measure the human impact of surveillance?
I want to ask the questioner a question back, but I can't. Perhaps they're talking about just kind of the sense of being surveilled in public space as the human impact. I mean, I want to reiterate that, like in the case of these CCTV cameras, no one is actively watching them. But if we're just talking about the sense that, like, there are cameras around as, like, degrading our experience of public space, I kind of agree with that, right? Like, then that's part of my personal feeling of, like, I don't want to just live in a society where we have cameras everywhere. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's just like a part of the conversation. And again, one of these things that makes it really hard to weigh is that there are these kind of I would love to, I mean, I think the solution is we need to have a holistic public safety strategy that makes our city and our neighborhood safer and then not have cameras. I mean, again, I think from what I've seen, my personal view at this point is that it makes sense in certain, like, high crime situations to have cameras. I don't want to just, like, have them all over the city.
Yay!
Yeah. Hi, my name is M. Smith. I'm a member of Labor Militant. Mayor Wilson, first of all, I just saw a peaceful protester get removed from the venue, and so I want to ask, do you support peaceful protesters being asked to leave? I think we should allow them back in. But you've said that you've broken this... You said that you've broken this campaign promise on shutting down the surveillance cameras because you're concerned about crime. And if you are concerned about crime, why are you not fighting to tax the rich for community services that could actually prevent crime? Like free childcare, a major expansion of affordable public housing, and why did you recently tell business executives that you would be making cuts to public services? And to everyone in this room, it's clear that Mayor Wilson and the Democrats are not going to do anything unless we force them to. I urge everyone to come out to City Hall this Tuesday at 2 p.m. to make our voices heard. This long line of people is not going to get heard. We have to make our voices heard this Tuesday at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to respond to that. So, first of all, I don't feel that I'm breaking a campaign promise. I would like everyone to listen. Listen? Oh, really? Excuse me. Wait. Okay. What I said repeatedly last year during the campaign was that I did not support the City Council's decision to expand surveillance given the concerns that I was hearing from immigrants' rights groups and civil liberties groups about the danger that that data could fall into the hands of federal authorities.
But you're expanding it.
And that is why we are doing an audit. So I'm doing the due diligence to try to understand whether these data security concerns are warranted and take some steps to make sure that the data is as secure as we can have it. So I'm doing a pause, which, you know, I think is in line with what I said during the campaign. I never said I'm going to turn all the cameras off. I never said all the cameras should be turned off. So I encourage people to look carefully at what I actually said last year during the campaign, because my actual feelings about the situation and values have not fundamentally changed. I have learned more, and that has informed what I'm doing. But I feel pretty much like I did last year about this. In terms of what I said at the business event, I think we are going to have to make some cuts this year. We have a very large budget deficit. We are working on ways to close that deficit, and I don't think we're going to be able to close it entirely. And I do think...
And cut SPD.
Huh? Well, that is on the table. So we have asked so in general, in the past, when mayors have asked departments to do exercises of modeling cuts, they have often not included the public safety departments in that. We have included the public safety departments in that. So we are asking all the departments to model what a 5% cut and a 10% cut would look like. And my team is very hard at work looking for progressive revenue options, taxing the rich, taxing big business, in a way that we think will both be politically viable and practical.
Good job.
Hi, Mayor Wilson. So I've been reading Axon's brochures on the evidence.com platform, and it includes AI evidence tagging, aka object recognition capabilities, which necessitate that they must possess an unencrypted copy of the footage. Courts have held that private entities can sell data to the feds without it being legally considered a search, and obviously that is concerning if Axon could theoretically do that. Would you commit to issuing a request for information on vendors that could replace the evidence.com platform for all of SPD's data on all crimes with one exclusively hosted on Seattle's servers for data sovereignty reasons?
I think that's something that my team has been looking into. It might be very, very expensive to host that data on our own servers, so I think that's kind of a consideration, but that is something that I think we were looking at. I will also say that Seattle does not use any facial recognition or AI stuff with our surveillance, and I believe that to move in that direction would require like an affirmative vote of the city council. So we do our surveillance ordinance, which could probably be stronger. It does require new technologies to actually go through a public process. So there is that.
So just to clarify, in Renton, which operates 24 flock cameras, the police chief, John Schultz, has said that ICE agents have accessed that data despite being granted official access through side door measures. Let's not pretend that official access counts as far as what ICE is willing or not willing to access. But moreover, Mayor Wilson, you said repeatedly that you are against ICE. The current congressman for Washington District 9, which includes South and Central Seattle, Adam Smith, has created ICE. He's voted to fund it repeatedly. He's one of Palantir's top 5 politicians in terms of donations who are massive ICE contractors. You refuse to back his anti-ICE opponent, Shana Sawant. Why are you refusing to support an independent socialist against this guy who created ICE? And do you actually support publicly calling to throw out all pro-ICE Democrats like Adam Smith from office? And if she tries to weasel out of this commitment, it's clear that we should all go to City Hall on Tuesday. The pressure movement is the only thing responsible for this so-called pause, and we need an ongoing to escalate the pressure of the movement if we want to actually win this demand.
So I'm not aware that Sham was actually asked for my endorsement.
You said during the campaign that you refused to endorse her. You were asked by a panel.
Actually, you're right.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. So, but I think what you said brings up. This is actually a good point. So, just so that people understand, my understanding, at least, of the issue with the flock cameras, and I'm not trying to argue here that flock is bad, Axon is good. So, just to be clear, but just so that people know, my understanding of the issue with the flock cameras is that the data security issue is with Flock's ALPRs, their automatic license plate readers, and that there was a kind of a default or automatic setting on those cameras that would automatically share data with other law enforcement agencies, including the federal government, and that many jurisdictions, including in Washington state, even without knowing it, had that setting on so that they were sharing data, even against the Keep Washington Working Act potentially, right? And so that is what the specific thing that has been in the news around the flock cameras. And I just, to be clear, Axon, there's not even that capability. So there's not like a setting which could automatically share data with other law enforcement agencies. So other law enforcement agencies would have to actually request data from SPD. So there would be that awareness and that ability to say no, which is the policy. So just sharing that information about Flock.
What about Adam Smith?
What about him?
Do you think we should throw out pro-ICE Democrats?
Hi, my name is Jake. I'm here representing myself.
I have not endorsed Adam Smith.
My question is, so you mentioned there's an audit that might be done by the end of the summer. It's a little bit nebulous to me. Do you have any plans as the audit is conducted to release like a schedule of when it will be done or any updates as you learn them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think my understanding at this point is that the audit will take a few months. And yeah, happy to, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't share a more specific timeline as soon as we have that. I think we're in conversation with NYU Policing Project now about the timeline and the scope and all that.
Cool. Release on Instagram, please. That's where I get most of my news. Thank you.
You're one of those.
Hello, Mayor. Given that Idaho just passed today a law that would put trans people in prison for life for using the bathroom that aligns with their identity on the fourth offense, that is up to life in prison for using the bathroom, and we will have thousands, if not tens of thousands, of transgender refugees coming to our state from Idaho, Kansas, Louisiana, et cetera. And given that Axon stores data on Microsoft servers, which Edward Snowden leaked in 2014, all feed directly to the NSA since at least the Obama administration. That's why he's in exile in Russia. All Google and Microsoft customer data goes straight to the NSA. The NSA didn't ask. They said, we're doing this. Microsoft could not say no. You can't say no to the NSA. So it doesn't matter what state that data is stored in. It goes straight to the federal government. What are you going to do to protect trans people, to create space for trans refugees, and to not give data to the federal government, which is having the data at all, because they will take it?
Happy to have you share all that with my team. If we think that the federal government is going to have access to data in that manner, that's a problem.
Thank you.
My name's Summer. I'm a member of Labor Militant. Mayor Wilson, you ran promising to hold SPD accountable. The Seattle Police Union president announced that they will not be following your executive order. What's your plan to make SPD follow the law? And do you support firing cops who are cooperating with ICE?
Yeah, I mean, SPOG is not the boss of the police. And we're working with SPD to make sure that they follow the executive order that I issued.
How? Can you tell us? How are you enforcing that?
I'm not sure what kind of answer you're looking for. We're working with the police department to make sure that officers are following the rules that we have sent down. And if they don't, then that's a problem.
Do you support firing cops who don't follow that executive order?
You mean firing cops who do what?
Who don't follow the law?
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
That are cooperating with ICE? Okay.
Hi, my name is Jason Thiel. I just wanted to say that you did break a campaign promise because you are going through with the expansion. Like, even if the audit's not going to be done until afterwards, you said that earlier. And also, you talked about the cutting the budget earlier and including the police and public safety stuff in your audit of deciding what to cut. But that's not the same thing as committing to not cutting public services. And it's also not the same thing as committing to cut the SPD budget. Will you pledge not to cut public services, cut the SPD budget, and tax the rich to fund the things Em was talking about, to fund free childcare, affordable housing, and city-run grocery stores, the shit that you ran on in this city, the things that working people actually need right now?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I don't want to cut public services that are useful to people. So we have a very large budget deficit. As I said, we're working very hard to identify revenues so that we don't have to make significant cuts. At the same time, I do think that, I think it's important to be able to take a look at all the ways that the city's spending money. And I said this during the campaign, to be willing to assess whether programs are actually fulfilling what they were put in place to achieve in a cost-effective manner. And I think we need to be willing to end things that aren't doing what we want them to do. So I'm not pledging to cut nothing, but I think, it's often said budgets are a moral document, and I think that there's going to be a lot of prioritization going on in my administration of making sure that we're trying to use our budget in the most effective way to achieve results for Seattle residents, including all of the things that I campaigned on, from childcare to
in that
grocery
same
stores
business meeting that that the Jumpstart tax, the Amazon tax, is like hard on big business in the
No,
city?
I didn't.
Like
I
you
didn't say
indicated.
that. I said that it's not ideal to have a business environment.
You've talked multiple times in this meeting
Let
about
me finish.
progressive
Let me finish.
revenue
Yeah.
and are indicating to business leaders that that's like harmful to them.
No,
So
no,
what
no,
is
no,
it?
no, no. I said very specifically that it's not ideal to have a business environment, including the tax environment in Seattle, that is dramatically different from our neighboring city of Bellevue. I believe that's true. I support a statewide. This is one of the reasons why I really liked Representative Sean Scott's bill to do a statewide big business tax with a credit for Seattle businesses, because that levels the playing field. So I think the big companies can afford to pay more, but it's not good to give them an incentive to go over to Bellevue.
Then why are you not fighting statewide? Mobilize working people.
So to the question whether the CCTV cameras make you safe, your answer was no. Then you also said that currently the data from the CCTV cameras sitting on servers outside of Washington state. And hence, we don't know to which laws they're not following the Washington state laws, right? Camera with our footage. Then you said that actually the SPD sharing data is not defined, or something like, you can correct me here, but you said that there is not, right now it's something that SPD has not defined. And you are doing an audit that is not going to be done until the end of the year. And all of this made you make a decision to move forward with the cameras for FIFA, where we're going to have countries like Qatar, Egypt, and Iran playing, and that means that immigrant population, many of them who are American citizens, and 10,000 of people are going to be attending the game, and they're going to be targeted. But more than that, not only American citizens, not only immigrant citizens are targeted by ICE. ICE is now collecting biometric data on citizens who are traveling. When you enter back to the United States, you have to take a picture, and ICE says they're collecting biometric data on every citizen that is. So, can you explain? It just doesn't add up. What's your
So,
here?
okay, I feel like you asked like 12 questions, and I want to respond to them all.
I want to see the rationale.
Okay.
How this data led you to this decision.
Okay, so I'm going to try to respond to a few things that you said. So I said that, in response to Florangela's question, that cameras in a particular instance would not have made me feel safe. However, my experience is not everyone's experience, and I also have the privilege of living in actually a very relatively safe neighborhood in Capitol Hill. And so I understand that there are many people who live in other neighborhoods in Seattle, and a camera presence in their neighborhood does make them feel safer, and I don't want to discount their experience. Now, again, I don't think that anyone's feelings about this are what should govern policy, but I do think that that's an important consideration. I'm trying to remember. So there was like 10 more things. The audit is going to take a few months, and part of that audit is looking at the security of that data that is held on servers in other states. So we are trying to assess what the level of risk is in that whole system. Anyway, let's move on. There was other things I wanted to say, but now I can't remember.
Hi, I'm Helen. I'm with Radical Women. And we opposed this system at the start, and we still oppose it and think it's a danger to the community for the same reasons. Danger to immigrants, danger to people of color who are stereotyped, danger to women who are fleeing domestic abuse, to people fleeing from states where their reproductive health and gender health care are illegal, and states could subpoena information. I mean, we all laugh. We know, oh, the federal government, you can't trust them. But if people have been activists here for a while, they know you can't trust the Seattle Police Department. You can't trust the county. You can't trust the judges to rule fairly. You can't trust the state to not spy and release its stuff. So this is proven history. That's data that has been proven on every level over decades. If there is information, it will be abused by these law enforcement agencies. What's not proved is whether it prevents any crime. You know, it's sort of ridiculous. We should go on the evidence right before our eyes of abuse and stop these cameras that are really capable of doing a lot of harm.
Hi, my name is Sochi. I worked on Katie's campaign and oversaw the 50,000 door effort that got her elected. And so I have a couple questions. One, one's a comment. It cost me $1.25 to do a public records request and get 30 minutes of video. I picked a random camera. So I'm not sure why you need a security audit if under state law these records are disclosable. Publicola reported that you knew that Chief Barnes was on the advisory committee for the NYU policing project. So how can the public have trust in this audit with a very clear conflict of interest? And was there any competitive procurement for that contractor? And I will also say, I think you're splitting hairs by saying this wasn't part of your platform, because I think me and the 1,355 people who signed a letter to you would have said that, yes, being against surveillance was on your platform. Also lastly, on April 10th, we're going to hold a rally at City Hall at 12 p.m. Hopefully we'll be celebrating you realigning with the platform that got you elected and got all these people to support you, or otherwise it'll be a moment for accountability. So.
Hi, Mayor. I'm Graham. In fair context. Oh, there was a question. Apologies.
So, so you asked a question about NYU policing. And I will say that, so first of all, Chief Barnes has stepped down from the board of NYU policing. And we were not aware that he was going to be on the board when we were initially having conversations with them. And again, he has stepped down. We did talk with a number of, in figuring out who could do this audit, we talked with other potential auditors, and NYU policing was really the one that, has the ability, the experience to do this audit. So
It wasn't an RFP.
no, it was not an RFP because we wanted to do it fast. And so if we want to do something in a timely manner, yeah. We're pretty careful not to break city laws. Anyway, happy to have ideas for other entities that could do the audit, but that was the one that we were able to find that was in a position to do it.
Well, and just so you know, your comms person was quoted in Publicola saying that you knew he was on the board.
That we knew he was on the board when?
That you knew that he was on the board. That's what, Eric is.
We found out somewhere during this process that he was going to be on the board.
So you still went forward with contracting them? Because I think under any
Again, he has stepped down from the board. Anyway, we can provide you more information about that. But again, happy to have ideas. We looked for other entities that would be able to do this audit. Okay.
Actually, on that note, so Chum News, in collaboration with the South Seattle Emerald, has been doing some reporting about NYU's policing project. The project has historically received funding from policing technology providers like Axon and ShotSpotter, and continues to receive funding from policing software provider Mark 43. Why should we trust the policing project's audit? Do more credible and neutral arbiters not exist?
And again, I think we would be, members of my team are over there, and we would be very happy to hear ideas of other entities that could perform this audit.
It's your job to find other entities.
Yeah, and we tried.
But you didn't
So we have a hard out at 7:30, and I'm just mindful it's 7:16, and there's a lot more folks. So I just want to say, if you've heard your question or comment already expressed, please maybe give some space and time to the person behind you.
All right. Hi, I'm Graham. I did data work for your campaign, full disclosure. I just want to say first, thank you for being here and actually having this conversation with people. It's really nice to have a mayor who talks to the people. So thank you so much for that. Second piece, could you talk a bit about the metrics you'll actually be using to determine in this audit if the cameras are safe and secure?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm not sure what metric. I mean, I think they're gonna be coming back with like an analysis of the ways that the data is being held and any vulnerabilities that exist. Again, the piece that I'm most concerned about is like the out-of-state servers where the footage is being uploaded to evidence.com. And so I assume that we will be getting some information about what vulnerabilities might exist there. And also I think on the masking is another area where, again, we have been told by SPD that like the technology behind the masking means that the mask cannot be removed, but I would like some independent analysis of that. Yeah, I don't know. So just like clarification on those points which seem like there could be a vulnerability there. And then there's also just a more general privacy side of that audit. And yeah, does that answer your question at all?
It did, actually it helped. Thank you.
In the interest of getting to as many questions as possible, we're going forward limiting to 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. My name is Curtis Atkinson. So much of the discussion around data safety rests on keeping the data out of the wrong hands. But that assumes that the hands the data are going into are the right hands. SPD is not seen as a neutral institution by many people in the city, especially the people who live in the neighborhoods that expansion will go into. Yes. Data shows that increasing trust and legitimacy in institutions increases case clearance rates more clearly than cameras do. And as the students in Rainier Valley and the youth convened by Washington Bus said, remote surveillance of those communities will decrease trust and perceived legitimacy in our institutions. So why are we investing in CCTV and in RTCC instead of doing the hard work of building trust between communities and those institutions? And if you were to go forward with this institution, or with this expansion, what would you commit to as actual actions that could be taken to increase trust and legitimacy, even despite the harm to trust and legitimacy that will arise from CCTV expansion?
Yeah, so I mean, I think as I've said a few times, I do not see the cameras as our public safety strategy, and they are certainly not a substitute for building real trust between our police force and the communities that police are serving in. And so that is a whole nother body of work that my office is working on. And we're developing a whole strategy around gun violence prevention that involves both the police and community-based organizations. We're developing better kind of neighborhood-based safety plans that will involve that kind of various ways of trying to build more trust, and that's a kind of a neighborhood-specific thing, right? The kind of what's needed in Capitol Hill is different from what's needed in Rainier Beach, is different from what's needed in the Central District, and so that is, I mean, honestly, that is a much more important and labor-intensive body of work than deciding what to do about the cameras. So absolutely there, and I will just say that you made a pretty blanket statement about the neighborhoods that these cameras are going to be in, how people feel in those neighborhoods. I would say it is complicated. You want to go and talk to those 1,000 people who signed a petition in the Chinatown International District in support of surveillance cameras. Those people are out there too.
Hi, my name is Sage Mitchell, and I'm a member of Radical Women, and I have also worked as a cybersecurity researcher. Given the number and variety of entities that affect surveillance operations, not to mention the levers of control granted to the federal government by the Patriot Act and so forth, how confident are you in your ability to continually and accurately audit and influence who or what can access the data and whether our rights are upheld? Thank you. I think that our job as
my job as an elected official and the job of the city government is to put in place as robust guardrails and oversight and protective policies as we can, and it's always a work in progress, right? So we'll do the best we can, and then we'll look for vulnerabilities, and we'll do an audit of how we're doing, and we'll try to do better. And if there's like a breach or something, then that tells us we need to do better, right? Like there's not, I'm pretty confident in the path that we're on, and having seen kind of what I know now of how the system works and what we're doing now to try to get more oversight and put better policies in place. But I can't say that I'm 100% sure. I don't think any of us can say we're 100% sure of very much these days. So.
Hello. First of all, there's no safe surveillance in a fascist nation. My name's Coco.
Can you say that again?
I just said there's no safe surveillance in a fascist nation. And I'm Coco. I am a teacher who works with students with learning disabilities. I first started tutoring people in the King County Jail who did not have their GED. Those were children we already failed. Later, I had a contract working with students who were considered failing students in failing schools in Seattle, and all the schools that I could see, for students I could see, were in the South End. You said you changed your mind around surveillance with community violence, and then today you also said we know cameras actually just help maybe protect property. So I just see a discrepancy, and I wonder what would happen if you pumped the millions that we're spending on cameras directly into the families and the neighborhoods and the children and youth programming, because we know resourcing community is what actually prevents violence. Yes. So I'm just wondering, when you say you change your mind talking to families impacted by violence, and having worked with so many students who are the ones who get disenfranchised and then end up in our system, which is happening again right now, I'm just wondering, why are we still investing in the cameras if you say it might protect property, and we know it has a track record of being racist technology as well? Why are we still pumping money over there when we could be just giving those millions to kids?
So this I think is a good opportunity just to say a little bit more about some of the ways that I think the cameras can provide a public benefit. So yes, some of the research says that they can deter property crime, right? But the other thing that I'm trying to say is that they're useful in solving crimes, and in talking to victims, the families of victims, that is something that is very important to people. I think that's important. And absolutely, and that is why cameras are not our public safety strategy. But in addition to solving crimes, there's just a couple of things. So one of the ways these cameras are useful in the course of solving crimes is by ruling out suspects people who did not do it. So if the police are able to look at footage from a camera and see who did something, then that makes it less then when someone points at someone and says, I think it was that guy, and they can say, no, we have the footage, it wasn't that guy, they're not arresting that guy. Okay, so that is something which I think we should all think about, right? And, hold on.
You guys, sounds like you've changed your mind. Have you considered how much of the information you're getting is from propaganda? Because it sounds like once you
So,
a lot of the talking points are propaganda, and they come from the police. And did you know that police get sweetheart deals when they get these tech contracts, and they are personally benefiting?
So let me just say one more thing. So that's one thing, and I think there's also a dynamic of sometimes when a violent crime happens, if it's the kind of crime that could provoke retaliation, there can be pressure on witnesses to come forward publicly in order to solve that crime. If there's camera evidence, then that often means that witnesses do not need to come forward publicly, which can help to protect them. Now, I'm saying, and this is part of, I'm saying that these are things that I think we need to consider. Also, I don't know how often those things happen, right? So I'm not saying because of these things we should all be in favor of cameras. I'm just saying these are things to consider in how these cameras are actually used and ways that they can actually, I think, benefit the communities that you're talking about.
2 years ago, an innocent man was arrested because of CCTV in Wallingford.
Not your turn anymore.
Hi, my name is Jim Baines. I'm from the American Party of Labor. First, I want to say policing is inherently classist. The people who are being surveilled are the lower class, are the working poor. The people who want cameras, they're business owners. They're small business owners who want to protect their private property. But You've also said that SPD doesn't use AI within its police surveillance technology for facial recognition, but Axon Technologies uses AI within its automatic license plate readers. Automatic license plate readers are not guaranteed to get the right information down. What happens when a citizen is wrongfully arrested because of an ALPR? What happens when they're jailed for a prolonged period of time, lose their livelihood, their job, they lose their house? What are you going to do about it? Because that is going to increasingly happen the more we have these cameras.
So we haven't really talked about ALPRs. So Seattle's ALPRs we have turned off for the time being because there's a new state law which we're trying to figure out, make sure that we are coming into compliance with.
So what happens when SPD goes and violates those policies? This is a police department that just got off its consent decree. How can we trust the police to go and not use AI in this way?
Hi, my name is Julian Kinberg, also from the American Party of Labor. You've said you consider yourself a socialist. At the very minimum, that would be looking out for the interests of the working class and not partnering with big business. Mass surveillance overwhelmingly suppresses the working class. You must be aware of this. Others have pointed out that, that the money could be better spent. Do you know how much the Axon contract is worth? It's $165 million. Are you aware also that Axon sells technology to the Israeli government, the Israeli military? Were you aware of that?
I think a lot of companies sell technology to the Israeli government.
So I'm just going to jump in, and you're going to be mad at me. It's 7:28. We have a hard out at 7:30. But I did want to say that mayor@seattle.gov is the best way to reach you if you want to translate what you were going to say here directly. I did have a question, and you kind of brought it up, which was, is your vision, you want to finish this? Okay. Is that okay? Apologies then.
So my name is Rick McKinnon. In an ideal world, we wouldn't need surveillance cameras because everybody would be behaving courteously, but we don't have that situation. I read in the Seattle Times recently that they identified the suspect in the shooting deaths of the 2 students in Rainier Beach, and part of the detectives' work involved looking at surveillance video from neighboring businesses. I think there's value in surveillance video, and I know that in
If we were planting people, we could have done a lot more.
I'm going to interpret, so please don't cut me off in 30 seconds.
Hola, mi nombre es Adriana, soy de Venezuela, pero ya tengo un largo tiempo aquí. Pertenezco a una gran comunidad migrante de Venezuela que día a día está pasando por muchas adversidades a nivel social. Siento que es más importante promocionar las cámaras que aún no tienen un contexto definido para su uso y que igual tienen un costo innumerable, mientras día a día lo que importa es la integridad de la comunidad. Hace 2 meses tuve una reunión con gran parte de su equipo comentándole la situación que está pasando la comunidad migrante a nivel de vivienda. Es una situación bastante grande en el sentido de emergencia. Estas son las horas de hace 2 meses y todavía no he tenido la oportunidad de reunirme con usted. Espero tener la dicha de salir de aquí con esa reunión.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adriana, and I am from Venezuela. But I have actually been here for a long time, and I am a member of a really large Venezuelan community that is going through so many different difficulties. And I feel like through this event, it actually sounds like the promotion and the continuation of the cameras is much more important than actually solving the issues of migrant communities that are going through many, many different difficulties. And actually, a couple weeks ago, we had a meeting with Alexis Rink and Dion Foster, and we also invited your office too. And we in detail, in great detail, we explained all of the different difficulties that our community is going through, and we have not heard a response from your office. And so our question to you is, what is more important to you, the surveillance of the community or the well-being of the community?
Yeah, I'm very happy to engage with your group. And yeah, I mean, the well-being of the community is of very high importance to me, so let's talk more.
Can we set up a meeting before we leave today?
Sure.
Mayor at Seattle.gov is the best way to reach Mayor Wilson on this issue, or I take it any other issue. I did want to ask you, just when you know, whether you're the mayor for 1 term or 2 terms, what you can decide is really creating a Seattle of the future. When you think of Seattle in 25 years, the Seattle that you're creating for your child, are you thinking a Seattle where there's cameras everywhere? Are you thinking a Seattle that is so safe we don't need technology?
That's a really easy question. Yeah, I mean, I would love to be part of working with community to create a Seattle that is so safe that we don't need surveillance cameras. Yeah.
Thank you very much for spending a Friday night with us and those watching on live stream. Thank you very much, Mayor Wilson. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the dialogue.